Politics has helped shape the decision of the polity, from conspiracy theories to good old-fashioned comic politics.
These are the results of tomorrow's election. Okay, you have it already, have you?
I am not hungry. If I need appointment, all I need to do is to start praising government.
Plus, politics will fill the polls of the country, from friends to frenemies, even strange bedfellows, to clones and stooges. We go beyond the rhetorics and the drama to analyze the story behind the story.
Let anybody come and say.
The moment we stop having charlatans occupy political offices, we will curtail hate speech.
Plus Politics, not just another political show. It's about putting you, the citizens, in the know.
Are you ready to party right from the comfort of your TV screen? The Rundown's here to save the day. From freshly baked videos to the classics to the youngins and dope conversations, all in one chart. We got you covered. Just tune in to The Rundown every Friday, 10:30 p.m. West African time. The Rundown. Let's turn it up.
Expelling me from the APC will cause more crisis, says Zamfara APC chieftain Senator Garba Marafa, while he threatens Mai Melai Buni. And World Bank blames terrorism for economic decline in Nigeria. This is Plus Politics. I'm Mary Anako. A chieftain of the ruling All Progressive Congress APC from Zamfara State, Senator Kabiru Garba Marafa, has brushed off threats by the governor, Mai Malabuni-led caretaker Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee of the party to throw him out of the APC, saying doing so would only aggravate the problems afflicting the party. Marafa urged Governor Buni to respect the rule of law, saying the Yobe State governor should stop deluding himself as the national chairman of the APC, declaring that he is the only chairman of the party's convention planning committee. Marafa threatened to institute legal actions against Governor Buni's CECPC over what he secretary of the All Progressive Congress at the FCT chapter. And we also have Biodun Shomi, a political analyst, joining us. Thank you very much, Mr. Shomi, for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Great. Let's start with you. This is very interesting. This is not also the first time we're talking about the internal crisis within the APC, but it seems to be getting to a boiling point. And Marafa now seems to be the one who is, attacking the leadership of the party. But not just Marafa, we see issues around the country. I'd like to remind you that River State still has its party issues. We have the Senator Abe.
Political problems, called and presided over by Buni itself is questionable given a prior decision of the court, judgment of the court involving the Yobe State government. We already know that APC may be on the slippery road. The Convention Planning Committee should have ceased to exist. It's of the view that the Buni's Convention Planning Committee is acting ultra bias of the rules and constitutions. The National Executive Committee of the party that can do that, or suspension at the board level, which is quite clear, or by the National Working Committee of the National Executive Council Acts, it may apply. Not a Convention Planning Committee would choose to sack a member. And that is why the senator is challenging, the chairman. It's gradually becoming like a major tussle between himself and the convention chairman. And because he believes the law is on his side, so therefore he's open to test it in court. Be that as it may, it will only create another new round of uncertainty, not only surrounding the past convention, but also a future one. Because if he ends up to be right, then APC will have a problem. It means the first convention is being challenged, may not be up, and then you are going into another hole, which a minor hole, which also may mean it's not legal. If you are to look at it from the face value, rather than studying the constitution properly or waiting for the courts to interpret the constitution. So I think this is the risk APC is taking in this phase with Marafa on this matter.
I want to quickly ask, could this have been avoided? Because this is not the first time that, threats of taking the party leadership to court has been made. I remember, before the last, I think that they had re-registrations for their members, and we saw a lot of, disagreements across the country. And then, of course, before the Congresses also, we've seen several threats. Could the APC at the national level have avoided all of this? Because it seems to keep, if it's like a hydra-headed monster that every time you cut off one head, another one grows up. And this time it's Senator Marafa. Next time it could be another person. Could this have been avoided?
Yes, it's totally avoidable. If you look at the problem, that is if Marafa is right in the first instance. And if you look at the other problems besetting all the states, many of the state chapters, it's simply, again, avoidable. If you remember, including Festus Keyamo, a serving minister, actually warned the party about the implication of the Odo judgment, that it may mean that the current leadership of APC leadership will be thrown into question. And they felt it is better to sort that out now, which was not heeded. And because of that, it could also be a matter for adjudication. So when you look at the two situations we're talking about, they are totally avoidable. But Nigeria being what it is, many people thought we can do it, get away with it, we'll get this man to back off, or get that to back off. But forgetting the fact that that is not the right way to go. It is better to stick, by the rules, governing the conduct of political affairs of any party. Well, the reasons for the deployment of the police force to APC headquarters is not far-fetched. The reason is very clear. The goal of the police is to ensure the security of the building and people working inside the building. Tempers are building up, they're flaring up. There are contending forces within the APC, both at state level and we're beginning to have, at national level, and for them, it's a major issue. There's also the worry about the use of thugs. The police have no business interfering in the internal affairs of a political party. But within the context of protecting lives and properties, then I think they have acted in a proactive way.
Let's talk about the suspension of the Congress in Zamfara. They had ward congresses, but then they suspended those activities. I'd like to quote the APC in Zamfara State. They said that or rather on Monday in Abuja, he said that their attention had been brought to the ununiformed and misguided comments made by Senator Marafa regarding the APC congresses held in Zamfara on Saturday, November 13. He said, while the APC will not join issues with Senator Marafa, who's supposed to be the party's leader in Zamfara, but chooses to denigrate the party and its leaders, he said it's important to set the record straight. For avoidance of doubt, Akpano still speaking, said, the APC received intelligence reports bordering on security of the Zamfara. 47 young people from Katuzu ward in Bade local government area have dumped the APC for the PDP. And this is also because of all of the infighting within the party. Now, we know that the elections are around the corner. Next year is campaign season. So we're going to see a lot more of these crisscrossing. Many pundits early this year had said that the APC might not necessarily stand strong as it was in 2015, come 2023. And many others have said that, well, it's just one of those things that happens just before the election season. But do we see a strong and formidable APC come 2023 with all that's been happening and all that's not been addressed?
Yes, let me just briefly comment. A very strong-willed person with more problems for the APC. You are likely going to see more defections if that happens, and that politicians, but with ordinary members of the public. We have seen most of the promises betrayed, in terms of there's increase in fuel price, the value of naira to dollar is not parity. We now have a huge gap between the naira and the dollar, currently trading at about 5.40 naira to a dollar. We have never gotten this bad when it comes to exchange rate. We also know that the cost of living is going up and workers' salaries are not being increased. So consequently, many workers are receiving pay cuts. That's what it means. And there are huge number of people, caught in the poverty trap. We have 10 million kids, who are roaming the streets. They're called street kids, Almajiri, or whatever name they call. They don't seem to have any future, or they are not stakeholders within their own country. It's not only that we have huge security problem. Our nation has never been so badly threatened as we have now. The country is being challenged from left, realistically, on what their chances are and what do they need to do to retain power. One of the major issues that will determine whether the party can retain power or remain as one is the question of who becomes the presidential candidate of the APC. If you have the presidential candidate of the APC emerging in a way that all the party gladiators and rank and file across the country are able to embrace the person, then maybe that can give a new cause for hope, optimism for APC. But if the party still
does the issue of zoning not come to play here? Let's not forget. The issue of zoning is a big deal. So whether the gladiators ban behind a particular person, or not, does zoning not come to play? Because if everybody likes a particular person but not from the zone that everybody wants, that person to come from. Right now, the South is canvassing for a president. Whether he's going to be from the Southeast or she's going to be from the South or the Southwest is another issue. But then the South is angling for something. So what if the party gladiators are not banning behind the Southern agenda? What then?
That is the point I was about to make before your interjection. What you see is that the party is divided. When it comes to presidential ticket, the party is divided into two. You have the North and the South. We have seen the powerful governors, from the North align with the traditional rulers from the North to challenge their Southern governments, on their position that the North should allow the next presidential candidate of APC to come from the South. That is currently being challenged, and that will pose a major problem, not only for the party, but for the country, if they are not able to resolve this amicably. In my view, and rightly so, many people think that given the challenges the country is faced with, it is a lot better and in our national interest, to allow the South to produce the next presidential candidate. The North cannot say they are relying on chair number to decide that, because you have different ethnic groups, over 350 distinctive languages, within the country, and therefore it is not a straightforward matter like that. It is not a matter where you bring in people
in the country, in the northern part of the country.
It's no more an allegation. If you remember the last election, the president of the Niger Republic came to Kano and openly campaigned. It's no more an allegation. Now we have seen, Fulani herdsmen, moving across the border, with ease. in thousands roaming all over the whole country. And currently we are doing registration. Nobody's going to stop them. They're doing national ID card, joining the national ID card scheme. No one is stopping them because we have been told that all Fulanis, no matter where they are one, and they're from Nigeria. You know, that is the argument being pushed by their psychic. So when you have that situation on your hand, where people can freely move from one part of the country, outside the country to a part of the country, and then they are allowed to stay, to do whatever they like. Of course, people are bound to start asking questions that when you talk about majority, is that majority, does that include those who are moving in or out of the country at different points in time? But the fact of the matter is an internal problem of APC that we're really focusing on. At the end of the day, if they failed to resolve this issue amicably, we may end up with a fractured APC or with a depleted APC or an APC that will lose power at the center. This is the reality of the matter. The issues are so far-fetched, you know, the sentiments are so deep, you know, and therefore, I don't think we can easily crack over, you know, paper over the cracks if, for instance, the next presidential candidate is not from the South. I think this would deepen or worsen, you know, the unity of the country.
Quickly, this is my last question before we wrap things up. You obviously are aware of the fact that the Lagos panel for the NSAS and police brutality has presented its report to the governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Now, that is just Lagos. Of course, this is where soldiers actually shot at protesters. And we've seen some of the excerpts of that particular report. It's not been made public, of course, but in due course, there have been several demands that have been made, key points that that committee has made. Now, the federal government seems to be a bit tight-lipped on this particular issue, and of course, presidential spokespersons too of the for 2023, being that the presidency is of the APC.
The NSAS panel report, which is out currently, is a leaked one. Even though government, the Lagos State government, has not denied the authenticity of that report. The government has actually set up a review committee, which is correct, you know, to produce a white paper, you know, on all the issues raised in that report. The government is right on that. Now, in relation to the findings of that report, the finding is so damning that many people are embarrassed by it, you know, in the sense that our children were complaining about police brutality, police extrajudicial killings of youths in the country, only for us to end up trying to disperse the same youths using soldiers who, in the first instance, are never trained in the art of peacemaking. They are never trained in the art of policing. They are trained to kill. So we ended up deploying soldiers, you know. I don't know what we think soldiers were going there to do with guns. You know, they went there with guns. So we saw so many casualties, and then the same police officers accused, the police force accused of extrajudicial killing, you know, by men of SARS, you know, came back to do a mop-up killings, according to that report, if that report is accurate, you know. To do a mop-up killing, it's quite unfortunate that we could reduce, you know, ourselves to this level where our youths are seen as, you know, legitimate targets for their game, you know, to be shot at, you know, anyhow. And what is so amazing is the fact that it's actually the peaceful protesters that were shot. You know, I don't have an issue if the police are trying to contain those who are burning police barracks, you know, killing police officers, burning TBC, burning Lagos State government buses. I don't have an issue with that. They need to arrest those situations at that point in time. But arresting those situations does not mean you need to go to where there are peaceful protesters who sat down singing national anthem and then start shooting at them. In any case, we should not forget, for those who argue that the government declared curfew, I'll say yes, the Lagos State government declared curfew, but the curfew was to commence at 9. The shooting started at 7. So 2 hours before the coffee commenced. So what happened at Lekki Toll Gate is totally unacceptable. On the role of the federal government did not help matters at all. We have the information minister. I wonder what he will now say to the public. I wonder what else Alhaji Lai Mohammed will say now that many people take it seriously. You know, he came out openly to say these are reports of massacres without dead bodies. Now, we have seen that the massacres have dead bodies, and that has been made impossible. Again, the Minister for Information went as far as asking CNN, you know, to do a retraction and apologize for his reportage, you know, on the incident, on the killings in Lagos. But we've also seen that CNN is right. So I don't know what else he has to do other than to eat the humble pie. He shouldn't have opened his mouth. You know, he shouldn't have commented the way he commented without investigation. Wow. If I were the commissioner, the Minister for Information, at that point in time, I'll be sticking clearly, you know, to the government line that, look, a panel has been set up to look into these issues. We will know whether people were killed or not killed, but not to outrightly deny those killings. So when it comes to the impact on 2023 elections, yes, it will have some impact because many of the youth are very, very aggrieved, and therefore government needs to placate them. We need to apologize. We need to make sure that this kind of situation does not occur again.
Well, we want to say thank you very much for being part of the conversation. Biodo Showumi is a political analyst. We appreciate your thoughts. All right, thank you all for staying with us. Coming up on Plus Politics, the World Bank blames terrorism for the decline in the economic activities in northern Nigeria. We'll take a short break now, and we'll be back.
Sometimes when they get most of these armed robbers and these criminals, they will parade them in the public. They will ask these criminals to demonstrate how they carry out their criminal activities. That is an erroneous process by the policing system. So that was where kidnap took the boom. The kidnap market took the boom because the risk implication in kidnapping, Mary Ann, is very low compared to the risk implication in robbery. So
members of this political class sold their souls to greed and voracious accumulation. So I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? We can write the Constitution as much as we want, but if these people, the politicals that we have now, are those who will work the Constitution, they will always find a way of bastardizing it. You'll be shocked if one goes into itemizing some of the laws we have in this jurisdiction that have been made so functionally useless because of the ingenuity of the Nigerian political class at making any form of legislation or any form of rule nonsensical when it comes to, perverting it.
The current Commissioner of Police in Lagos State, Mr. Odumosi, I hope I got the pronunciation right.
Yes.
Has a very unadmirable history of disregarding the rule of law. The man seems disconnected from democracy. He cannot appreciate why citizens should express themselves. He cannot understand why Nigerians should be aggrieved, why Lagosians should come out to express their opinion on issues of concern. And he had consistently over time clamped down on peaceful protesters, assaulted journalists, led invasion of protest venues, peaceful protest venues, and he continues to serve the corrupt elite. without any regard for human rights, without any regard for democracy, without any regard to his statutory responsibilities. But to your question, we need to say clearly and emphatically, there is nothing under the Constitution, there is nothing under the Police Act of 2020, there is nothing under the laws of Lagos State, or any other law for that matter in this country that empowers the police to detect when, where, or for what reason citizens should gather peacefully and express themselves.
Now, talking of what Moghalu talked about, the merging of 6 political parties, there are a few questions we are going to ask ourselves. Is it ideated just to, at the end of the day, we'll still be back to where we are today, or even worse? But talking of success first, let us also not forget, nothing tried, nothing gained. That is one. 2, I think they are also exploiting the infamy of the present administration. And also don't forget that these measures we are talking about, we are only seeing the likes of Moghalu and co. These are parties that will be populated by a lot of disgruntled people in the PDP and in the APC.
The World Bank has attributed 50% decline in economic activities to terrorism and kidnappings in the Northeast. Co-author of a World Bank report, Marco Hernandez, disclosed that economic activities in the Borno, Adamawa and Yobe states, however, declined from 10 to 14% between 2009 and 2013. According to The Economist, economic activities in the Lake Chad region further declined by 50% since 2018. He also added that issues related to climate change were also responsible for further decline in the activities in the agricultural sector of the economy. On how insurgency affects border countries, he said Boko Haram has also affected neighboring countries of Niger, Chad and Cameroon, apart from where the actual attacks take place. Well, joining us to discuss this is Peter Egbidion. He is a security expert, and Andy PlusTvAfrica is a public affairs analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Mary, and good evening.
All right. I'm going to start with you, Andy. Yeah, Peter, thank you for joining us. Andy, it's very interesting that, you know, when we talk about, you know, terrorism, we can tie it to economic activities and all, you know, and how people are unable to do business because a place is not safe. But in the Nigerian context, it's a multifaceted problem. For example, I remember 2-3 years ago where women who produced gari in, let's say, a Che community were unable to bring it to Port Harcourt because gunmen cultists were killing them on their farmlands and burying them alive. And so, of course, the cost of gari skyrocketed in Port Harcourt. And we're also having the same issues as to, you know, economic activities around the areas where these killings or kidnappings are happening. But let's go to the bottom of all of this. Why do we think that, aside from Boko Haram, insecurity and terrorism has grown so much in the country that we're where we are today?
Okay, so first off, at the root of every conflict is resource mobilization and allocation. At the root of every conflict, whether the conflict is conflict that is within the home, whether the conflict is conflict within a community, within a country, it's about resource mobilization and allocation. So what they have said at the World Bank is not far from the truth. Yes, there would be other dimensions, other colorations to why you have conflict. Some, we can quickly say, can be ideological. Yeah, And that is what is firing up a lot of the pockets of conflict that you see scattered across Nigeria, starting from Boko Haram. Even though we acknowledge that it is critical to know and to accept the universal truth that resource mobilization and allocation is usually the reason for conflict. Right now, they have taken it a bit higher by introducing a new dimension of ideology, so that they want to enforce certain religions, certain ways of doing things on the people so that they can harness, they can enjoy the resources that are possible from those environments. See what's happening in Afghanistan, for instance. Today, they have taken over Afghanistan and they are propagating a way of life and living at the same time harnessing and enjoying the resources in Afghanistan. So, for instance, if there were no resources in that land, if it was not possible for you to be able to make money, in that land from what has been naturally deposited in that land, you'd find that people would revere the human resources more, like you would find in some countries like Switzerland, like you would find in Japan, like you would find in Norway, like you find in some of these countries, because they understand, therefore, that is the human resource that would be able to have them enjoy resources. If they are unable to properly harness, if they are able to properly put together, work the human resources, they will not be able to enjoy. But in the case of Nigeria, you see that there is a lot of conflict around how to mobilize and allocate resources. Certain people up north are saying the resources of the oil belongs to them. The people in the south are saying that the resources of the oil belong to them. The people in the east. And this is what is at the core of the conflict that we have in Nigeria. And just to jump in and quickly answer your question directly, other reasons that may cause conflict or occurs in, terrorism can be one, ideological reasons. And you can find greed also thrown into it. You can find religious practices thrown into it.
Of, these bandits and why he thought, because he had been visiting with them, and why he thought they were doing what they did. Now, he pointed mostly to the fact that government had abandoned these young men. He talked about the fact that they were uneducated, they were illiterate, they had no soft skills. And so the easiest way for them to, get on with life was to go into the trenches and pick up guns and, carry out these dastardly acts, even though it doesn't sit well with me. But I'd like to put it to you as a security person. We also hear of issues of ungoverned spaces and ungoverned areas where most of these terrorist activities thrive. I'll ask you, why do you think that these spaces still exist and are ungoverned?
Well, first of all, the landmass, the number of security personnel we have on the ground is incapable of adequately policing and providing security across the vast, wide spaces of this country. It would be literally impossible to have, with the way we are now, it would take a lot of time to recruit and train new security personnel. So that's one of the reasons why it is difficult to really secure those places. Also, because we have a limited number of men or boots on the ground, so to speak, if we try to engage these insurgents in the kind of warfare that they are fighting right now, they will draw us into a longer conflict. There will be significant casualties. Already there's battle fatigue for many of the troops who have been deployed already, and it's causing mistakes in some ways, and that leads to loss of lives and assets as well. So the answer to that question is that the primary reason why it's difficult to govern those spaces is that we don't have enough security personnel to do that, given the kind of terrorist threats we're facing.
And now dealing with, because he also talks about the fact that there's been some form of abandonment. And I think that Andy also mentioned something like that. So we're not just dealing with Boko Haram. Boko Haram is obviously mostly in the fringes of the northeast, but we heard, I think 2 months ago, that they were moving, moving their camp to the northwest, but we've not really heard much of Boko Haram, thank goodness. But then we still are having to deal with bandits and, these killings and kidnappings. And the governments in most of those places, take, for example, a state like the state of Governor Autumn, where he's always, calling on the federal government or speaking about the fact that the federal government is not doing its bit. Let's talk about the governors themselves in those states, in those areas. How well have they done with the people in those areas? Because they are the ones who somewhat are perpetrating these. I mean, as much as we say that we have the armed struggle within the Sahel and we've seen a lot of gun running across that comes into the country, what about keeping the young people busy so that they're not necessarily wooed or lured into these, practices? Peter, can you hear me?
Or the young people,
Peter.
Human beings in general have.
Yeah, we're having connection issues. We're having connection issues.
So I would say human beings. Hello.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I was saying that there are 5.
Oh dear, Peter.
There are 5
Peter, we're going to throw this question to Andy because we're having connection issues with you.
So if
we're having connection issues with you, Peter, it's difficult for us to hear you. So we're going to throw this question to Andy. Andy, can you come in, please?
Yes, let me say this and let me make it abundantly clear. The reason we have ungoverned spaces is not because of the fact that we have limited number of security personnel. Yes, that can be a secondary reason that have been estimated to be bandits, the number of people that have been estimated to be fighting the Boko Haram war, and compare it to what we have in the entire military of Nigeria. You would find that if we just sent our arsenals, we deployed it to go and prosecute this battle, these people would not last for a week. I'm telling you, go do this calculation. The government is simply irresponsible. They are simply irresponsible. As I speak to you right now, go find the total. And let me tell you, there is nowhere in the world where you would have the right complement of security to prosecute battles like this. There's nowhere in the world. In America, is it in North Korea? Is it in China? See the population of China. See the number of the armed forces that they have. There's nowhere in the world. But guess what? It is the fear of the government and the fear of the coercive instruments that actually prevent people from getting into crime and criminal activities. Once you are unable to convey this fear into the hearts of the people because of the fact that you have abdicated your responsibilities, like we have seen, you would therefore find that the people, different peoples in that territory, will begin to all of a sudden gather some gumption, gather some audacity with which to be able to take spaces for themselves. Again, because I have talked about resource mobilization and allocation. The government simply have abdicated their responsibilities.
Andy, I'm not in any way holding brief for the government, neither am I holding brief for our security forces, but just to put a number in those parts, the northeast. So I'm wondering if we take all 223,000 soldiers to the northeast, what happens to other areas that need to be covered by soldiers?
Over a million. If you put the Nigerian Navy, Nigerian Air Force, the Nigerian Army, the Nigerian police together, they are over a million. And I am not telling you what I am manufacturing from my room. Yes, we can be more than that. Yes, Nigeria should actually have more than 1.2, 1.3 million that we currently have today. We should have as much as 10 million, 7 million. But Marianne, guess what? What is the total number of the people prosecuting this insurgency in the Northwest? We were given the result recently. What is the total number of Boko Haram fighters, estimated Boko Haram fighters? They are not up to put together 100,000, Marianne. Okay, let's even say that. Let's even say they are 200,000. Let's even say they are 300,000, Marianne. And they are not. Let's even say they are 300,000. If you took 700,000 of the Nigerian total armed, Marianne, the reason we police, the way we police banks and prevent fraud is not because we have control officers that are moving around the bank every second. No, we introduce systems. We have introduced structures into the banks that makes it impossible for cashiers to steal. This is the same strategy that can be deployed in fighting security, insecurity. You introduce fear of the Nigerian military into the heart of the people. Coercive. See, let me tell you, Marianne.
Quickly, because we have to go. Yeah, quickly.
Hello.
Quickly, because we have to go.
There's no reason other people, other than the state agencies, there's no reason they should be able to deploy violence and deploy it much more than the instrument of state that have the legality to deploy such violence.
All right, Peter.
Today in Nigeria, we are
Andy, because we're almost out of time, let's try to get Peter in quickly to give his 2 cents. Peter, would you like to contest what Andy is saying about deploying military to the Northeast?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. I mean,
Peter, we're so sorry. Once again, we tried to give you an opportunity to speak, but I think that the connection on your end is pretty bad, so we apologize. But Andy, thank you very much for being part of the conversation. Peter Ebidon is a security expert. And of course, Andy PlusTvAfrica is a political analyst. Thank you so much. We have to go. That's all on Plus Politics. Thank you for...
For me, I wanted to change that culture. I didn't believe that until you see a white man or you see a foreigner in the kitchen before you can believe that, you know, good food is going to come out of that kitchen.
You can leverage on each other's spaces and, you know, sell. We believe in Nigeria, right? We believe that Nigeria can get better. We, the youth, are the ones that can make it better.
And my products are proudly